Unfortunately, Justice Bromwich of the Federal Court accepted the submissions of our Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Anna Cody, who's the woman with the red shirt below, who claims that sex is not biological, it's not binary, and it can be changed. So, on this effective reasoning, Justice Bromwich accepted that Mr. Tickle was a woman and found that Sal and Giggle had acted unlawfully in excluding him from the app. So this is probably the most significant legal outrage of the year. Well, hello everyone. This is just going to be a very quick run through of the highlights, disappointments and outrages from Australia over the past year. It's been a very busy year since I last presented last July to this same conference. So there's a lot to cover, but I'll just do it very rapidly. So the decision in the federal court case of Tickle versus Giggle was handed down in August 2024. And you might recall that this was a case where Roxanne Tickle, the man pictured on the top left, was refused access to an online networking app called Giggle for Girls, which is an app designed by Sal Grover, who's also pictured next to him, and was intended to be exclusively for women. Unfortunately, Justice Bromwich of the Federal Court accepted the submissions of our Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Anna Cody, who's the woman with the red shirt below, who claims that sex is not biological, it's not binary, and it can be changed. So on this defective reasoning, Justice Bromwich accepted that Mr. Tickle was a woman and found that Sal and Giggle had acted unlawfully in excluding him from the app. So this is probably the most significant legal outrage of the year, and we hope to see this decision overturned shortly, as the appeal of this decision is about to be heard in the first week of August. So not this week, but next. However, it was by no means the only outrage of the year, and I've got a couple of other pictures, I'm not sure if you can see them all, of some other events. So I'm going to go month by month because I just used as a quick guide as a way to organise, because there's just so much to cover. And you can see that, for instance, the other outrages included the Australians Women's Soccer League amateur title being won by a team sporting 5 biological men. And of course, also the heartbreaking news of yet another family court decision permitting a 12-year-old access to puberty blockers. The next month was September, when the Lesbian Action Group had its hearing before the Australian Administrative Appeals Tribunal. The Lesbian Action Group was having a decision, challenging a decision of the Australian Human Rights Commission, who refused them an exemption to hold lesbian events free of men claiming to be women. So we had that hearing, and I'll come back to that because we then had to wait for the decision. That same month, the Minister for Women, the Federal Minister for Women, decided they refused to even allow the first reading of a private member's bill. It was a bill to reinstate the definition of man and woman in the Sex Discrimination Act. And they didn't even allow for it to be read have its first reading. So that was another low point for freedom of political expression in this country. So in stark contrast, in New South Wales, independent MP Alex Greenwich was able to fast track his so-called equality bill through the Parliament, which made extensive changes to a range of legislation, including removing the requirement for surgery in order to change one's birth certificate, making New South Wales the final state in Australia to have self-declaration, change of sex by self-declaration. He also made other changes, easing the pathway for parental recognition of babies obtained through unlawful overseas surrogacy arrangements. He made it created some domestic violence offences if you out someone's transgender status, and he removed the remaining restraints on pimps basically profiting from prostitution. So all horrible changes to the law, and they passed through very rapidly the New South Wales Parliament. The next month, we had more outrages. We had in New South Wales, this man in a blue dress received a financial settlement because he'd been held in a male prison and denied hormones while in custody. I don't have a lot of details of that case. That month, just giving a plug to Diana Kenny, who published the first Australian book on child and adolescent transgender crisis. Now, the really next big news was the case of Moira Deeming, who happily won her case against John Pesutto, who's the leader of the Victorian Liberal Party, or was at that stage, who had defamed her for participating in Posey Parker's Let Women Speak rally at Parliament House. Pesutto had claimed that Ms Deeming was aligned with neo-Nazis and was unfit, therefore, to serve as a parliamentarian, and that resulted in her expulsion from the party. Ms Deeming, however, won her case and has now been reinstated to the party, and Pesutto was ordered to pay her $300,000 in damages as well as her legal costs. Frustratingly, though, since that time, the Liberal Party has agreed to lend him some of that money, saving him from bankruptcy and therefore preserving his position as a parliamentarian, which frankly is undeserved in my view. So then the next disappointment was the Lesbian Action Group received their decision from the Administrative Appeals Tribunal in January. Again, a disappointing decision that relied upon the defective reasoning of Bromwich in the Tickle versus Giggle case. And they fortunately have also lodged an appeal from that, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Other outrages that month was that axe-wielding Eevee Amati was released from jail on parole after 8 years, despite having narrowly missed murdering several customers unfortunate enough to have been in a 7-Eleven when he arrived in a temper with his axe. There's been kind of minimal reporting about this, and most members of the public remain unaware that this lunatic was a man, not a woman. I'm not sure whether he's still maintaining his female identity. I gather he experienced a hard time from fellow inmates in the women's prison where he was originally placed, and had asked to be transferred out of there. But anyhow, he's now apparently released on parole. Another disappointing decision was made in the family court, but this time by a Justice Tree, allowing yet another child to be treated with hormones. But on the positive side, the Queensland government announced a review into the treatment of children with hormones, and that's currently open for submissions. And the federal government, no doubt sensing at that stage that it could hot up to be an election issue, ordered a review of treatment guidelines for trans and gender diverse children. Here we see Mr. Greenwich, the author of the Equality Bill, giving an award, Woman of the Year, to a male. Meanwhile, women campaigning to retain sex-based rights are increasingly being pursued legally, with trans activists seeking apprehended violence orders to silence them. So these are laws that were originally designed to protect women really from male violence, and they're now increasingly being used against women by men, and really is just another means of shutting them up. In March, we had some good news. Our ESafety Commissioner, who has been suitably admonished in several cases for using unlawful means to issue takedown notices to those who use social media to question ideology. So those who received her notices or through Twitter, their posts were ordered to be taken down, or she ostensibly pressured Twitter to take down these posts. But the kind of transgressions were questioning having a queer club in a primary school, or stating that men can't breastfeed. So she's been very active, the ESafety Commissioner, in censoring women's voices. Fortunately for us, Elon Musk has the deep pockets necessary to challenge this kind of oppressive conduct. So that's at least one area we've had some success pushing back. Then we had a big success with a big breakthrough with a family court judge finally bucking the trend in April and refusing to approve the treatment of a child with hormones, and instead admonishing Michelle Telfer, who's the woman in red in this photo. She's the expert witness was relied upon in the mother's case, and has been relied upon, I believe, in a lot of these cases involving the transitioning of children. She's a much lauded doctor responsible for drafting, for instance, the OzPAF guidelines, and has generally been a major figure in advancing the trans agenda within Australia. So finally, steps are being taken to hold her accountable for the role she's played in this scandal. And I gather the complaints have been made referring her to appropriate regulatory bodies. So that was great. Finally, a judge of the family court doing the right thing. Then in May this year, Mel Jeffers, detransitioner, has commenced legal proceedings suing her doctors for the physical and psychological harm that she has suffered. Her story has received significant media coverage, and Mel continues to campaign strongly to raise awareness of the shocking risks involved, not only for children, but also vulnerable young adults, such as herself, with unaddressed histories of trauma and comorbidities, who have been encouraged into these medical interventions. I've got a picture there also of some extraordinarily unsuitable public art in Melbourne, Australia. In June, the Lesbian Action Group were granted leave to intervene in the case of Giggle versus Tickle, which is a federal court appeal before the full federal court. So both those cases are going to be getting some sort of airing in the next couple of weeks. So that's going to be a very significant case, which we will all be following very closely. And I believe it's going to be live streamed on the court's YouTube channel. So finally, we come to this month, which has seen some significant developments with a co-founder of the Australian Greens, Drew Hutton, speaking out publicly about his concerns about the capture of the party by the transgender cult. This has resulted in his expulsion from the Greens, and now that's garnering even further publicity, which is great news to finally see people receiving the news that not everybody within the Greens is happy about what's going on. And that's seen quite a lot of coverage, especially by the Australian newspaper, which has begun profiling other Greens members who have been expelled, including myself, which was great to see my story finally being told after several years. And also, they've also done some great coverage of they've done a big article describing the distressing experiences of parents of children who have been effectively taken by the cult, such as Tess Hackett. And you can see that she's photographed there on the cover of the Weekend magazine. And so they've done really quite a big article there. We're still trying to get more coverage in the Herald and the ABC, and they have actually started to provide some limited coverage of this issue. So I've really just skimmed the surface of all the cases and events here in Australia, and I've probably left quite a lot out too. But you can see that every month we're seeing more and more things happening, and we've been very busy, really just keeping on top of things as they unfold. Yeah, and just a plug as well that Stasia Fry's podcast, A Sexing Society, has a lot of great content, and season 2 is out if people want to Google that, and you can listen in more detail to what's happening here in Australia. Okay, thanks very much. That's